Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Laura Rankhorn.
And I'm Kim Crumbly, and together we are
Counselor Accents. Kim, I don't know if you know this or not, but we have a celebrity with us today.
No, Laura, I'm super excited. And if you're only listening, you're missing out because he looks so cool.
Kim, you're embarrassing me in front of my new friend.
Not only does he sound good, he looks cool.
Thank you.
We have Jeff Ream with us, and you may know him as the Counseling Geek. He is the tech person. I would consider you, Jeff, to be the technology counselor person. Like, you just know all things technology. So it's very impressive. And I have read that you're also on the California Association of School Counselors, and you serve as the technology chairperson, which just verifies that you are the tech counselor.
Yeah, so I do the work with CASC, California Association of School Counselors. I've been there since 2013, so a lot of stuff has to do with running conferences. So it's big tech stuff, not even stuff that I necessarily even use in the counseling office, but it gets my little inner geek and inner nerd out. So it's kind of a fun way to express myself in a different fashion than I normally get to do on an everyday basis.
Wow.
Jeff, I hate to pigeonhole counselors, but not often do you see a counselor, because it's almost like that's one part of your brain, and then the other part of your brain is that mathematical puzzles, the logic, the solving. So have you always had this in you, this love of technology?
Yeah, so actually when I was in high school, I grew up kind of in the Google boom. So when all the new technology was coming out, I remember the release of the first iPad, or not even iPad, what is it? The i something. The little Walkman thing. I forget what the name is.
iPod.
Yeah, iPod. That's exactly. It's so old I can't even remember what it's called. The iPod. I remember that first coming out. And so ever since I was in high school, middle school, I've been in love with technology and just learning. That's kind of the big thing. Is I love learning, but I feel like that kind of really draws my attention. I actually didn't start my kind of interest in education and stuff like that until partway through college. I graduated high school and I actually studied aerospace engineering. So I totally shifted gears.
Wow.
I tell some of my friends that, I went from, high-level calculus and physics to I finished my undergraduate degree in liberal arts. So a lot of elementary education. And so from calculus to macaroni art, like that was kind of the transition, while my roommates are all civil engineers and they're still doing all this high-level stuff. It was a relief in some sense, but both my parents are teachers. They're retired now, but I remembered not really enjoying my experience in aerospace engineering, and knowing both my parents are teachers and seeing they support themselves financially, but it's also the intangible benefits of working in a school and working with students and children and families really provides a lot of great benefits that are not tangible sometimes. But thinking back, I couldn't be in the same classroom with the same 30 kids every single day, I don't think. So I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. And I thought back to my high school experience, and I thought, who was the coolest person on campus? And it was our counselor. So I thought that might be a good fit, where I got a lot of interaction with a lot of different types of students and a lot of different changing environments every day versus kind of the same classroom setting. So I finished that as my graduate school degree, and several years later, here we are. But yeah, it's always been an interest of mine. And you mentioned the website and the blog, and that's actually not, I created that not even intending to complete and continue that program itself. I actually completed it for this job that I'm working in right now. So I started it as a marketing technique to help me land a job, and it worked. So the approach really helped, and then it just kind of took on a life of its own. And it's really a good outlet for me as a professional and as a person. I get to try new things, and it's nice because it's not something I feel like I have to post to on a regular basis. I post when I find something that I really want to write about. It's a pretty low pressure thing for me, so it's nice as an outlet, both as a counselor and a geek. So
Love it.
Kim,
Where
in that
are you,
intro,
Jeff?
What's that? Where am I? I'm in.
Listen
I'm in
to
my office at North Tahoe High School. So I work at North Tahoe High School currently, and that's in Northern California, up in beautiful
Okay.
Lake Tahoe area. And it's a wonderful place to live. We're rural, mountain town, and we have a lot of seasonal employees. But we have a unique mix of kind of like pretty affluent students and pretty low income students. We're about 45% low income, which most people wouldn't guess if they heard that I worked in Tahoe. Most people would think that most people came from middle or upper income families. We definitely have both, but we're a relatively small school. So my school's about 450 students. And when I first started my job, I was the only school counselor. So I had all 4 grade levels. And we've grown since then. We've added about 100 and something students over the past couple of years. And so with that, 2 years ago, we hired my colleague, Lisa, who works, we're in a unique situation in that our middle school is actually connected to our high school. And so we don't share staff, or like students don't interact and that kind of stuff, but she actually works on both sides. So the schools are separated by a staff room about 30 feet. So she goes back and forth between 8th and 9th grade. And we did that very purposefully for that transition between middle school and high school. And so I now only have the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders that I work with on a yearly basis.
wow.
I love that. That's. I was just thinking, what a great way to do that if you have 2. If
Yeah.
you could do that, because a lot of schools are made that way where they're connected. So that's a really good idea.
Yeah, we couldn't quite justify I could easily justify, but the money couldn't justify potentially having them at one location or the other fully. So we compromised, and we actually really enjoy the dynamic that it creates in students coming from the middle school to the high school, having someone they know and trust already in place, instead of having to meet a whole new set of adults.
Makes perfect sense. Just from that intro, I'm like, okay, we need to have you back to talk about careers. We need to have you back to talk about, my mind just went crazy because just in your intro, you left us with so many nuggets of wisdom, and you may not even realize it. And also, I feel called to visit Lake Tahoe.
Anytime.
Tahoe?
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm looking out here at the forest outside my window. So beautiful spot. Yeah, no, rough life.
I'm looking at a dog giving himself a bath. That's my view.
Okay.
Well, let's get into some of our questions here. Talk about being ahead of the curve. My goodness, when the world went to virtual learning, virtual counseling, and Kim and I were running around with our heads cut off, like chickens with their heads cut off, you probably kept your calm because you're like, I'm already there. I've got this. So tell us what that transition to virtual learning was like for you and what you witnessed with maybe some of your coworkers, or not even coworkers, just other counselors.
Yeah, it's being in the world of technology definitely had its benefits when that happened. I would say that, it wasn't as easy as you might think. There's still, just because I use a lot of technology in my day-to-day work, doesn't mean that it's always set up for that type of interaction. And so that was probably the biggest shift on my part, was being able to basically use this tool and essentially change the focus of how it's working. So instead of having students being able to contact me by coming to my office, it's a little harder to make those connections sometimes. And so one of the big things that we use pretty frequently that I intentionally put into place when I started my job here, because I distinctly remember reading through, and I don't know if I read one of her books or I attended one of her talks, but Trish Hatch, who I've gotten to know pretty decently well in the last couple of years, she talks a lot about this idea of our school counseling office needs to be a general practitioner's office and not the emergency room. And that was a big piece that really stuck with me when I first started my job. And I've always come into new positions thinking that if there's any time to change something and set the tone, the first time you do anything is really probably the time to do it, because there's no set system, right? So people don't have to get used to something different if you change it. That being said, I don't kind of say don't change. Like, I think people need to change, but I think that it's maybe easier if there's no system already in place. And so one of the first things that I really focused on doing was trying to make our office a little bit more efficient. I didn't know my predecessors at my school, but it sounded like some of the process was not very efficient, and things were not kind of happening maybe like they should have. And so one of the first things I did was change how people made appointments, and no longer did people just walk in willy-nilly unless there was a true emergency. They made appointments, and then I used an online service, which I've kind of dabbled in a couple different ones over the years, but I've kind of landed on Calendly right now, which is a great tool. But that's been a game changer over the course of the years, and really just rolled right into our distance learning just beautifully. So instead of them having a meeting where they show their teacher their phone or their computer or whatever, saying I got a meeting with Mr. Ream, and coming down to my office, they hop on a Google Meet or a Zoom call or something like that with me instead. So that was a nice setup for our quarantine situation, and made an easy transition. The other piece that was a nice transition piece, which didn't take a whole lot of like pivoting, was the use of videos. So I like to use videos quite a bit. And again, kind of this idea of efficiency, maybe that's my engineering side of my brain coming out a little bit, but I like things to work smoothly. And I like to be efficient with my time. Efficient and effectiveness is very important to me. And so when I looked at how do I get information out to students in a digestible but accessible way, I do a lot of recording of videos, whether it's recording a live video that I'm presenting like lessons and posting it on YouTube or live streaming it on YouTube, or just creating little short nuggets of how do you change your schedule, how do you make a counseling appointment, where three or 4 minute long videos with pictures and kind of catchy music and whatnot that parents can use. That having a few of those and then expanding on that over this quarantine time has been really beneficial as well, I think, helping people be able to get access to the information.
That is so good.
I love where you're going with we say work smarter and not harder. And I think that is where Laura and I both in our counseling realm have, it's kind of like this, not only did this pandemic change the world medically, but it also is making us think different. And I could see counseling, I see a lot of jobs, but I see our job changing. And you've got to change with those times, and you've got to, I don't know if we'll ever go back to things the way they were exactly. I think that this opens up the door for a lot more virtual type learning. So I just love that word efficiency that you used, and thinking about how can, and I think that's where Laura and I think a lot of people's brain is, how can I do this differently? How can I get this information out differently than I ever have before, and maybe you can, like you said, do a video and it can go out. You're using your time wisely. So
yeah, like when I first started, and before I had recorded meetings and such, our attendance, we do parent workshops and whatnot on different topics, from college admissions to kind of like what does junior year have in store for you and things like that. And, one of the struggles was getting the timing right, getting people to show up, making sure, a lot of people couldn't make it because they didn't have childcare, and that's difficult for us to provide, and location, and a lot of different variables that are hard to control for. We can't, necessarily, as much as we want to as counselors. I think that's ingrained in all of us. We want to fix everything and make everything in the world right. And I think we should work hard to do so, but we also have to let go a little bit and, realize that that's not always the case. We can, the more we can realize that reality is the better we can serve students, I think, on some levels, by accessing the tools that are appropriate for that circumstance. And so one thing that I did that I continue to do, that I did this prior to COVID, was setting up a live stream from all my meetings. I realized that, many of my meetings are in the early evenings and stuff like that. And kids with, parents with younger children, or people who play sports or just can't make it for whatever reason, or working, they couldn't ever come to any of these workshops that I was trying to do. And so trying to get that information out to them. And then, I would also field a lot of emails. Can you please go over the 2 hours of information that I just got done sharing with everybody, with me, just a one-on-one? And I kind of had to say, well, no, like that's why I do these sessions, because it's, if I had to do this for 2 hours with every single parent, that would take forever. And it's not very, again, efficient use of my time. So I started doing this live broadcast, which coincidentally also records it and makes it immediately available on YouTube for anybody that wasn't there. And so it's almost, on some level, it's almost backfired in that more people actually watch the recording than actually come now. So it makes it much more accessible. My one hiccup that's really challenging is I'm not bilingual. And so that's a big challenge for me. We have a live translator that attends with me to meetings, but getting those recordings in both English and Spanish, as our primary languages here, has been a roadblock I have not yet been able to solve. We're still working on trying to figure it out, but it's created a lot of really good inroads and made information accessible to people that maybe it wasn't in the past. And that's been a really good thing for my counseling department. And it's also fun for me to play around with it.
Yeah.
So are you just for our listeners, when I'm writing these tools down as we go, you're just videoing on your phone and just uploading those to YouTube?
Yeah, so you can do that. So you can use your phone. What I do, and on my blog, I've actually got a couple of things where I kind of walk through and give you the tutorial of how it works. But basically, when you have an account, you have an opportunity to live broadcast. And I use a webcam, the same webcam I'm using right now, to do so. And our school bought a little a microphone that I want to say it's called the Yeti microphone, that is a USB microphone, plugs into my computer, that's much stronger and picks up more of the audio in the room better, and also allows for, like, if a parent asks a question, it's not like me just responding to empty air. They can hear the question from the audience too. But pretty much that, and a decent internet connection, and you can get yourself up. There's a little bit more to it than that, so I don't want to oversimplify it, but with a little bit of patience and a little bit of willingness to kind of read through some help documents or watch a YouTube video or two, anybody can do it. It's something that's not too terribly tech savvy. It can seem scary, but it's pretty approachable if you just take it one step at a time and just slow yourself down and kind of look at some of the help that's out there already for you.
So good. And hearing you talk,
I had to plug up my computer. I didn't fall, Laura. I didn't fall out of my chair.
You guys do blooper reels?
we do sometimes. Yes. I just looked up and you were gone, Kim, and I was like, okay, what?
All I could think, Jeff, was when you said iPod, I thought, poor Laura, that's all she has. Plus, she has the flip, her phone literally still flips up. So please be careful what you say. It could offend Laura, who
you can sell that for a lot on eBay.
In the 1980s. Okay. Go ahead, Laura. I'm sorry.
Oh my. I was just thinking as you were talking, I can think of where I was, like, even last year. I might have had the thought about doing videos, but I felt like maybe it wasn't as personal. But now, on the other side of this virtual counseling world that we find ourselves in, I have found that it's almost like people feel more connected to me because they get to watch me through these videos. And so it's just, I guess it just opened up my mind a little bit. There was just a block there thinking, oh, I'm not connecting with people, but they're connecting with me,
Mm-hmm. And, with skyrocketing caseloads and stuff like that around the country, it's effectiveness. So yeah. if I'm going to give this 2-hour session, which anybody can give, not technically, but if it you can watch it on YouTube or you can come in person, and the in-person one might be better, but most people will get the same essential feeling and content out of that watching that video. What I see is instead of doing, that's like tier 1, everyone gets the lesson. It leaves me more time to do some of the things that do require the more personal interaction of people sitting in my office with me, or having that personal phone call, or having that time to deal with follow-up questions, for example. So I'll get a lot of emails saying, like, hey, you mentioned this, can you tell me a little more? Can we set up an appointment to do that? And so it changes how I'm using my time in a way that allows me to let everyone get the foundational information that's out there. And then the ones that can run with that, they can go. and they're off. And the ones that don't, they come and ask for help. And that's where I feel like my time is extra useful, is being able to support the ones that have trouble understanding some of the rudimentary information that maybe was shared that night, or maybe just didn't connect with something.
Jeff, are you virtual this year, hybrid or traditional?
Yeah, so they just announced about a week and a half ago, we're going to be digital through the end of September at the soonest. And so I predict that'll probably be longer, but that's they're going to take it it sounds almost like a month by month thing for our district, where they'll look at it. In California, they have the governor and different organizations have certain things in place that say when schools can or can't open. So they have to kind of work with the county health agencies and decide that. But right now we're going to be virtual through the first month of school, which we had the end of the year virtual already, and this is going to be a whole new experience having the first part of the year be virtual for us. But then eventually, hopefully, the goal would be to come back in some sort of hybrid model. Kind of do a phase back in would be my idea of what would happen. But who knows? That's kind of what I'm telling my students. It's like, we can only control the things that we can control and try to prepare the best for what might be coming. But if we sit and stress too much about kind of what's going on in a month or 2 months, like, we want to prepare, but we can't overthink that. Right. And so we gotta live in that moment of what we're doing right now. So yeah, right now we're in virtual, and we'll be ready for hybrid whenever it happens. But we're kind of digging in and getting ourselves in a place where we feel confident with supporting students and developing programming. In the spring, we kind of lost our momentum with some of like the classroom lessons because, we as a counseling team decided that, if a student has 30 minutes of time with some adult at school, we felt that it was probably a little bit more crucial in that time frame for it to be with a teacher and not maybe with us in a lesson about bullying or something else. And so we kind of went more on the end of kind of like supporting the really high need students or the students who weren't connected and engaged and really focusing on that. So we're looking forward to doing a little bit more of that again, tier one, kind of preventative, ask a national model type approach in our kind of day-to-day work. And at least through September, that'll be through short video segments and things like that. So.
What about small groups through virtual counseling? Have you tried that? Have you done anything with small groups? Okay.
Small groups has been one of the hardest things that we've had to get started with at the high school level. We do run them, but it's a little bit few and far between. I would say that's probably one of our weaker areas of our counseling department. And not that we don't want to, it's just that it's a lot of logistical challenges. So we have a couple groups that happen on campus, and they're kind of facilitated by different folks. We have some people that come in and do like a safety group, more like domestic violence and that kind of stuff, which I don't feel like I'm not developed enough in that area to facilitate a group like that. And so we bring in a few people that are trained more specifically in certain areas. But we haven't tried anything digitally. So that's something that, we're not quite sure how that's going to work.
You're trying to think through all the logistics of doing this, and when you're doing things that are virtual and you want to make sure that you're following FERPA, and so we just are looking for any information that we can get. We just know that you have to be very, very careful. I was a high school counselor also, and I do agree it is hard logistically to get small groups together, unless it's like I could do it easily, a small group of students who are going to a particular college, or those kinds of things. But those small groups with needs was hard to get everybody together. So it is different in high school than it is, I think.
Yeah, so if people are watching this and they have great ideas, I'd love to see the feedback on that too, so I can, I love to learn new things, and anything about small groups I'd love, and especially facilitating online, but even not online, it'd be great information for us to have.
It would be. And that's one thing about our audience. They are amazing at sharing with us their tips and their ideas. And so I bet you we'll get some ideas from them out of this.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And even if I'm just throwing this out to you guys, even if it is something that you could do a call, something where you're getting students who may feel isolated at home, but all of yours are going to be at home, where for us it'll just be a few at home, so that would be different too. So Laura, I hope you're going to get some more tips, because that's what I want to know. What can we use
Well, I will tell you that he has a mini series, a tech tool mini series. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great place to start. And it was developed out of when this whole thing started. When we went on quarantine, it felt like anybody and everybody, which is great, wanted to step in and help teachers and counselors and that kind of stuff. Here, have this free this and this free that, which is awesome. Um, on one sense, I kind of think that they kind of use the drug dealer approach of like, here, try this tool, now pay for it because you got so ingrained and developed all your lessons on it. So,
Yes.
so I don't know. I don't think they're as angelic as many people might think, but I think it was a good move, and I think it provided a lot of people a lot of opportunities to try new things, which is awesome. But one thing that I noticed was my inbox keep on getting filled up in my Facebook feed and whatever else with like invites to professional development and invites to trainings and things like that, which again is great. The problem is they were like 3-hour trainings and 2-hour trainings here and all this other, like they were long. And I know that I don't have an infinite amount of time to be able to sit and learn about something. And so what I decided I wanted to do, and I just, again, this is kind of me, I want to do this, let's do it and see what happens. And it ended up going pretty well for the most part. Using YouTube very much like I do at school. Basically, I had 15-minute tech tools, which was the mini series. And so about once a week or so, twice a week sometimes, I would hop on YouTube Live. So I wanted to make a point that I was doing this all in one place. Sometimes when I record a video or something like that, people are like, you didn't really do that in 15 minutes. Like you edited that out, you screenshotted things in and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure it was live so people knew like the things that we're talking about and showing and developing were all stuff that really could be done in a relatively short amount of time. And then the other reason for 15 minutes is I wanted to make it accessible to people. I wanted people to be able to watch it on a coffee break or a lunch break or something like that if they wanted to, and not have to take 2 or 3 hours of their day to get through pretty, usually too dense of information for what the topic is. And so there were 6 different episodes that I did, and maybe I'll add more to it later on, but felt like that was a good place for that spring time frame. We went through things like Google Forms. And so I showed a few things to do with Google Forms and how to use that as school counseling. Sorry, I got up on my other screen, so I'm checking it out so I can remember what we did. Talked about Canva. So Canva is a great tool for helping develop like graphic design. So it's kind of like a cheaper and more accessible version of like Photoshop and things like that. So there's a lot of great tools within Canva, and it makes your counseling department really pop. So I definitely encourage people checking that out. Talked about screencasting. So how I use screencasting in my department with like Screencastify, and I use Canva as well as another great tool. Which you might find, if you are digital, you might again find yourself doing a lot of that, so you can like record a video and then post it on Google Classroom or something. Episode 4 is on Weebly, so website creation, which is another area that I really enjoy working on, both my personal websites and my school website as well. And so, you can always check out our school website, the North Tahoe High School Counseling website, and feel free to beg, borrow, and steal anything from there. But I talked about an easy way to get started with website creation and how your counseling department can get there. Managing appointments, which I mentioned a little bit earlier about using Calendly and using our office like a general practitioner, not the emergency room where everything just comes in on fire. And then basically talking about using your inbox wisely. So how to, again, be efficient with our email usage, and really focusing on Gmail. My school uses Google Suite, and so that's what I'm most familiar with. So all my Microsoft friends out there, I'm sorry, but it's mainly there. But a lot of the tools actually there's some sort of alternative that you can access on, say, like Exchange or on Outlook and things like that. So that's kind of the 6 different episodes that I had. And then, most recently, kind of my most recent project that I've been working on, which I'm not quite ready yet. There's some still tweaking and I got some development to do still, but from that kind of series, I decided I wanted to start essentially kind of like more of a lab, for lack of a better word. So my blog is a great place to kind of share information, but it doesn't give anybody that much, doesn't give people a lot of opportunities to practice and put things into place like practically in terms of like step-by-step things. It kind of gives you a good overview. Some things go a little bit more in depth, but I wanted something that allowed me to really kind of show people how some of these things worked in a digestible manner, but maybe a little bit more long form than what my blogs might allow. And so I started developing, and like I said, it's not quite there yet. I'm hoping in the next month or so to have everything up and running. But I started what I'm going to call the Geek Lab. And what that's going to be is short, kind of like Udemy or Coursera type courses. And so they're going to be interactive courses that you can join, which will be probably a couple hours for each different course, maybe depending on what the content is. But the first one that I'm putting together is on Google Forms, and it'll be a 3-part course. So there'll be, I'm calling it the, what am I calling it? The Google Forms Jedi Academy. And so that's going to be, you'll start as a Padawan, you go to a Jedi Master, and then you'll be a Jedi Knight, depending on, and you can go as far as you want. Starts at bare basics, from how do I sign up for an account, and what is a Google form, to using things to create automatic filling documents and things like that. So it kind of goes through the whole range. And so I'm excited about eventually releasing that too. And then, again, I kind of post when I want, and so when I have an inspiration, I kind of want to throw something up there. We'll see what the next course will be after that. But yeah, that's kind of my next little what I'm biting my teeth into right now. And again, it's letting me geek out on all the different things that I like to do.
When is this going to be available? I'm ready. I need this.
Well, I'm hoping by, I'm aiming in the next month or so. It's taking me a little bit longer to get all the back end site stuff, because I have to create a new website. So it's kind of like a different, it's not just adding on. So it's taking me just a little bit longer. I also had my second son was born in June. So that also adds a little bit to the time frame. So I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-month-old hanging around right now. So while I was home for the summer and a little bit of paternity leave, it also was not the most relaxing, and free time was limited.
Right.
So it's taken a little bit longer than I'm expected to kind of get the foundations of the website built. But I wanted to be right, and I wanted to work like I intended to. And then I'm going to spend more time developing the coursework itself. And then I'm hoping by mid-September, end of September is my goal. But like I said, I kind of go with the flow. And if it's longer, it's longer. If it's not, it's not. But you'll definitely hear about it if you're on Facebook or any of the Facebook groups and that kind of stuff when I publish it. But it'll... at some point, I might charge a little bit of stuff for the courses, but initially it's going to be free. So I'm not planning on charging anything initially when it's released. And so I just want it to be a tool. Maybe I'm falling into the drug dealer effect too, but get people sucked in.
Well, your time is valuable, Jeff, and I think
so. Yeah, I want to make sure that it does add some cost to upkeep the website and that kind of stuff. So I don't want to cost my family too much to put it up there, but I really want it to be a service. That's the goal, is to be a tool for my colleagues to utilize and learn from.
Do you love him or what?
Well, I love the way he's bilingual. He goes between geek talk, Jedi, and then he'll, talking about geek. I can hear that inner geek, and then I hear the counselor talk.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We just accept things the way.
Yeah.
I know. Listen to him go. He goes in between these languages. Yes, I do. I love, and both of us, we call it rubber meets the road, when you can get practical ideas that we can take and put into practice. So what you have taught us and what's coming down the road, I'm excited. So that's because that's stuff that we can use as counselors and educators.
I have a question about Calendly. What age group does that work best with? How young would you say is too young?
Yeah, so granted, I'm in high school, and that limits my experience in other grade levels. So I did my internship experience in middle school, so I'm familiar with middle school, but I've never done anything in elementary. So I would be lying if I said I know what it's like to sit in an elementary school counselor's chair. But I have seen people use it at the elementary school level, but it's very challenging to do so. I would say Calendly is much more appropriate for use with parents and teachers. You can use it at any grade level. And I would say most of the time, maybe counselors are making appointments more with the parents than the students. They'll just call the students out. And so the one downfall of doing that is you have to keep a pretty strong digital calendar. And so you have to use kind of the busy and available features in your kind of Google Calendar or Microsoft Calendar, whatever calendar you're going to use, pretty solidly, so that it makes sure that it knows when you're available or not. But middle school and high school, definitely. High school for sure, both anybody. We use it with all of our folks. We use it with the only folks that we don't is and actually we do with even parents that don't speak English very well, which again I need a translator many times to collaborate with. We have our translation team, and they actually use it. So they'll contact the parent, and they'll actually sit down together and use the Calendly link to book an appointment where we can all sit down together. So it actually is really useful there too. We're not trying to bounce off each other's calendars and figure out when we're free. So they can actually they look at their calendar, they talk to the parent on the phone, they can look at the screen at my calendar, and they just sit there and book an appointment. We show up and we have a meeting. Middle school, you see a little bit, my co-counselor uses it, but the nice thing I find with students use for my own high school students is it's their hall pass too. So like many of them have a phone. If not, they can show them on their screen. Like they just show up. I don't even half the time even send a call slip for them. They're just here.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. So it saves paper and it saves me time. And I think it's good too, because it helps them build that responsibility level too. We want students to start practicing those real life experiences outside of just the school setting, where you're going to have appointments. You're going to make a doctor's appointment, and you got to show up on time. No one's going to call you down for your doctor's appointment, right? So you want to make sure that they can actually practice those real life skills. And I don't think there's any necessary age too early to start practicing that, but I think that high school and middle school, upper middle school is probably the most appropriate for use with students. But any age, definitely use it with parents. It really helps.
That's great. Kim, what else you got?
Well, I'm excited to go and look and see what he's got out there already and implement some of this. I'm sure that you use, I'm not sure, but do you use Google Classroom to send out information, or Twitter, or what is your social media like with high school? Do you?
Yeah. When I first started, and this is maybe will be surprising, but I don't use like social media quite as much within my school setting as I used to. I just didn't find, my principal actually does a really good job. We have a school Facebook page and Instagram account and stuff like that, and she's kind of in charge of that. She's won awards in our district for how great she is with social media and stuff like that. And so I have a counseling page on Facebook and on Twitter and things like that, but I don't use it nearly as much, just because I never really saw as much of a following as I felt like, again, efficiency, useful for that time and energy and input to use it in that way. Many times I have the ability to link into our school's Facebook page, and I'll just, I'll send something out there if I'm sending out an announcement or something. But we do use Google Classroom. I don't use a counseling Google Classroom. I think there is such a thing as being Google Classroom to death. There's so many Google Classrooms that people get, and so many different messages, and everyone gets an email for everything that's posted and all this other stuff. So I kind of made a conscious decision not to do that, but we do have, what we use primarily to post to is that we have grade level, so class, like class of 2021, classrooms that all of the students in the different grade levels are in. And so we try to be cognizant of how much we're posting on there, but that's mainly our main kind of Google Classroom presence. And then all of our teachers have Google Classrooms, and library and everybody under the sun has Google Classroom, it feels like. But we wanted to kind of like, again, kind of from the spring, we didn't want to overwhelm people with Google Classrooms. We didn't have one prior to this. We used the same system. And so we kind of just continued with that instead of starting something new during quarantine.
It makes you think that you're so right. And I think as counselors, we have to be cognizant of what the teachers are using. And if we saw that we could overburden the parents when we all went virtual, and the parents were overwhelmed, and we have to be cognizant of that too. So I just love that, thinking about using efficient, that word efficiency just keeps coming back. And, I'm doing scheduling right now, and it was a decade ago that we were still at the high school. It was the year before I started. I can still see the whiteboard. And I don't know if you guys ever remember your high school counselors doing this. And marking off classes, everything was done by hand. And I think about how far we've come. And it's still difficult for me. But I think about my old counselor having to put down everybody and do it with the big whiteboard. So
I have one of those in my office, and it's not used for that, but That was one of the first things I got rid of too, is how people do requests for classes. Everyone, when I first came, it was paper, piles and piles of paper, and people manually entering these classes into our student information system. I was like, no way am I going to sit there and enter all these classes. And so I was like, there's got to be a way to do this where they can do it themselves. And we do. We use Aries, which is a student information system, and they all kind of like college. They get information about the courses that are available to them. We kind of highlight a few things in classrooms and have individual meetings. And then they have a window of time when they go in and register for the classes they'd like to take. And we use all those requests and then build that master schedule. And usually we're pretty good at it at our school. Granted, we're small, but we're pretty purposeful. Like we start in about February and we end in May. So students by mid-May, right after AP tests, they all have their schedule for the next year. And that gives us the end of the school year to do a lot of schedule changes. So again, it's kind of like really building our calendar out to make sure that this is happening in certain timeframes. And sometimes it takes us longer than other years. This year has been a little bit longer just because of all the different, dynamics that have been involved with COVID, and who knows what's going to happen in the fall and that kind of stuff.
It's just like I told the teachers, we're doing a virtual open house, which Laura has a funny story about before we go. But we're doing a virtual open house, and I told the teachers there is a way to get everything that you needed to get if they were here. There's a way to do it. We just have to look for that way of how we're going to make that happen. And when you push, you get response. And so we put it together. It's going live tonight, so we're going to see. But Laura did a open house virtual that she spearheaded. And she did not realize that Google Drive only allows so many hits per day.
Interesting.
So,
I didn't know that either.
And it's been a real learning process for all of us. And it's not a funny story, Kim. It's very painful.
Still too soon?
I'm
Too
just
soon?
smarting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we put it out there last night, and I have just had to tell the parents, guys, I don't know what to tell you, but we broke the internet on this. And
It's a good problem to have.
Huh?
It's a good problem to have. It means people are accessing it.
Yeah, and I had Googled whenever I saw that it was coming up, you've exceeded your plays for the day. I Googled it, and one of the Google experts said to someone else, he said, it is very unlikely that anyone would exceed their plays for the day. And so I'm like, well, guys, we have set a record. That's all I know to tell you. But I'm going to have to go back in there and do something else.
Unless your little Ernestine's mama who didn't get on, and then she has a fit on Facebook.
Yeah.
I could not get on.
Yeah. The only other thing that I really kind of want to make sure that I leave you guys with, just the last, I guess, tidbit of advice that I've got, is kind of going back to this idea of starting something new. And, kind of like you mentioned, starting this open house. And I think a lot of the barriers to trying these new things, whether it's YouTube or Calendly or whatnot, is number one, changing kind of the status quo. Well, people don't like change generally. And so, you have to kind of like stick with it for the course. And so you have to kind of buy in for a period of time. That doesn't mean that if it's not working that you stick with it forever. But, you want to make sure that you set a certain, like, we're going to do this for 6 months. So this is how it's going to be for a year, and buy into it. And then people will slowly come around. Like it takes time for people to change. The other piece is also associated with time is a lot of people are hesitant to try new things or change because it takes time, and it takes time up front. And kind of like I talk with my students about this idea of an investment mindset. We need to have this investment mindset to be able to look at our long-term growth. Like, you have people that invest on the stock market in very short windows, but most of the time in life, we're investing long-term. Right? We're looking for that growth over time. And so in the world of school counseling or teaching or education, we're planting little seeds, but these things that will take time up front generally save us a lot of time in the future. And that's the piece that sometimes we have to kind of stop and think. And even I'll sit there and be like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to put in the work to make this change, even though I know that I'll be better off later for doing it. Okay, and so that's the biggest piece, is trying to figure out what ways can I do. It might be bringing on someone else that has a different idea than you. It might be creating a larger team or a smaller team, and just really looking at how can I get over this hump of being willing to put in the work in advance. Okay, and it might take a lot of work in advance to free up time later to really do the work that we're called to do. And a lot of these tech tools, they're replacing things. For example, Calendly, there's usually sometimes a cost involved. I can we spend $120 a year on Calendly for our 2 counselors for the kind of extended version. And, if you count that by number of manpower hours, I would be thousands of dollars by having to make phone calls to set up meetings and wasting that time when it's just there. And so it's a no-brainer in terms of the finances on some levels. And so you have to kind of think like an administrator and kind of money people sometimes of how much is this going to save a master's level professional who doesn't need to be making phone calls and leaving voicemails to set up an appointment. Like, you have a master's, let's use that to the best of our ability to work with families. And so by freeing up that time we can. And so just having that investment mindset really will take us far. And I think as a profession, maybe as a culture in general, but we need to, I think, have a little bit more of that investment mindset in our lives and just think about how are we setting ourselves up now to better ourselves in 5 or 10 years or even next year or next week. And so that's when you're practicing technology tools. If you look on the website or you look up a YouTube video on how to do something, give yourself that space to fail. Give yourself the space to grow into it. Practice. If it sucks the first time, maybe try something different. But give yourself that growth mindset is kind of overused, I feel like, in today's day and age. I like the word investment mindset. So give yourself an investment every day. And then pretty soon that investment grows into a big nest egg that you get at the end of the day.
Gosh, I love that. I would give you a standing ovation if I weren't attached to this microphone and everything. And if Kim had
if I had on pants, I would.
Yeah, I'd say sweatpants and shorts, right?
That's a book. That's your book. Write a book. Jeff, write a book called Investment Mindset. And
someone probably already has. I'm probably going to get a copyright notice later, but
oh my goodness, that is really, that's just so good. That is really, really good stuff for me. And
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking what you said, Jeff, when it's easy when you came in and you were new and change was because you had this opportunity to set it up the way you wanted it.
Right.
And Laura's at a new school, but I think for all of us, now is the time to
everybody's a first year teacher, right?
Yes.
That's the thing I've been seeing float around.
Absolutely. Everybody's a first year teacher. So now is the time. And like you said, give ourselves room to fail the first couple of times, because we're all in this kind of zone where we're all having to try new things and try again and try again. So now is the time. Don't miss this. I guess my message here is don't miss this opportunity. Mm-hmm. What you're saying.
Hopefully it never comes again. But
hopefully it never comes again. But this is the opportunity to make those changes that need to be making to make your program more efficient. But yes, you're absolutely right. That did sound kind of like we're in the middle of this great pandemic.
There's a lot of positives. I think you mentioned at the beginning of the session. I think there are you can choose your viewpoint, right? You can look at this is all the bad stuff that's happening, and there are a bunch of bad stuff that's happening. There's a lot of impacts, negative to our students, to our families, to our communities. And, we want to try to fix those things. But I think we also have to keep our eyes open for the positives that come out of it too. And I think that's something that gets us through every day, is finding those little nuggets of happiness, or the nuggets of things that, keeping your smile file in your office, or whatever it is that, will see us through the bad times or those good things. And so, there are a bunch of things, like I said, all the free stuff that's come in, the people wanting support. And I think that if we pay attention to that, we do have a good opportunity. And there's probably very little other time, better times to try something new. This is a time, I think people get a lot of grace right now. People are, parents are understanding. As long as you're doing something to try to help their kids, I think they're pretty open to, let's try anything. My kids are crazy. Let's make it happen. Do whatever you want. If you want to use YouTube, I'll use YouTube. If you want to use Twitter, I'll use Twitter. And so I think everybody's kind of in this trial and error period. And so let's do it. Try something new.
Thank you, Jeff. You have been fabulous.
Thank you for having me.
We have been so inspired. I'm ready to get off of here and go try something new.
You sounded so Southern right then, Laura. We have been so inspired. Draw it out. Please draw inspired out more, Laura.
Let me try again. We've been so inspired. But really, this has been just wonderful. I feel like we have gotten tech tools, but we've also gotten a pep talk. I am ready for the year.
I feel like I've been in the coaches. What does the coach have?
The huddle?
The field house. We've been in the field house.
Okay, field house.
I don't know, and we've gotten a good. So more than I thought from the geek counselor. I want to be honest with you. You're really good on both fronts.
I got a lot of things in my little toolbox here.
Thank you so much for sharing them with us.
Yes,
I appreciate you guys having me on here. I really loved getting to share a little bit about my interests and what I like to do, and about me, and hearing from you guys. And if there's ever anything that you guys or anyone watching needs, there's a contact information on my website. I'm happy to answer questions. I answer questions pretty frequently. If you're stuck and you're banging your head against the table, can't figure out this dang YouTube thing, shoot me an email. I don't know how much I can help, but I certainly will point you in the right direction if I can't.
Thank you.
I love it. We will link to your website in our show notes so people can contact you that way. And I hope that you will join us again soon, because you have just been a wealth of information, and I can't wait to see what else you do. And please use us to tell the world about it, because you've got some great things going on.
Thank you for having me.
When we were editing this podcast, some of these moments were too funny to just throw out. So I moved them to the back of the podcast, but they're actually things that happened right at the very beginning. This was when we first met Jeff, and Kim immediately told him he just looked cool. And I just wanted you to enjoy the discussion that followed after that.
She's like, nobody says that anymore. Like,
well, she says it. I'm like she sounds like one of the characters from Grease. Like, oh, they're so cool. And I'm just like, Kim, no.
Yeah, what do they say?
I don't know what they say. I don't know, but I'm judging her for saying cool, but yet I don't have a good replacement. So
what are the kids saying these days?
I know.
So, Jeff, what's your first impression of me? Careful!
You look very studious. You look like a lawyer with the bookshelf. Yeah.
Thank you. And this is not a Zoom background.
Oh,
okay,
nice.
This is the real deal.
Can I tell you my first impression of you, Kim?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead. I want to hear.
Well, I really don't have one. I just wanted to scare you for a minute.
I really don't want to hear. I know my first impression.
You're still getting set up, and we have a guest in front of us.
Housekeeping.
I'm impressed.
I'm going to turn the light on. I just need better lighting. I feel like I am Betty Davis. The lighting is not.
Jeff, do you know who that is? Because I don't.
Betty Davis?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
What movies is she playing?
You're going to have to go back to the 30s. And no, I'm not old enough to remember Betty Davis either, but I'm an old movie buff.
There is no need to adjust your audio on this next section. Kim could not get her microphone placed correctly.
Okay. We're so happy to have you on here, Jeff. We're set up and ready to go now. We'll be respectful of your time.
You might want to reposition your mic a little bit. You lost some of your audio when you moved it up a little higher.
You may just need to hold it like that.
It was good where you had it.
It was.
I don't know where I had it, guys.
In front of your mouth.
Yeah, that's probably better.
I have to tell you, her computer goes possessed every now and then. And so all of a sudden she's talking and it just sounds like, you're like, what is that?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
So now you'll know.
Little gremlins inside the motherboard.
It's got to be. Yep.
But, so you're going to record this. Does this go up on video somewhere too?
Yeah, we put it on YouTube.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want
So I shouldn't pick my nose and...
Well, it's up to you, really. I mean, some people may
It's never stopped Laura. But since you look so cute and cool, this will be a good YouTube.
This episode and others are available on our Counselor Accents YouTube page. Thank you so much to everyone who has been listening to our podcast and for rating it.